Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de my new personal obsession. Yes, it's actually a sport. Oh, I haven't been kidnapped and replaced by an alien. I mean, if I was kidnapped and replaced by an alien, I'd hope that the alien would have something better to do with this human form than to make him look ridiculous playing a niche sport, right? But hey, that's just me. But anyway, off on a tangent we went, didn't we? I mean, today we're talking about pickleball, and of course, whether Mr. Fluffy would like it too. L. L. XenPuck here. So we're pretty new to Texas, and honestly, because of the whole pandemic thing and the whole our house is being renovated thing, we barely do much outside of the house for the entire duration of our Texas journey so far. Alas, all that has changed within the last month when I discovered, you guessed it, pickleball. And I just can't wait to share my thoughts on this bizarre little game with the rest of the world. I mean, this is a real sport. There's even real professional leagues in the US anyway. But I feel like it could probably use a bit more exposure, as when I looked up even the professional level games on YouTube, the views are more in the tens of thousands, maybe a little bit over hundreds thousand, something like that in terms of views. I mean, you know a sport is pretty niche if YouTube views at the highest level can't even break into the millions, right? So, number one, what is it? Well, to me, it's basically mini tennis with some slight twist to it. The paddle is closer to the size of a ping pong paddle, and the court is actually the same size as a badminton court, apparently. I mean, honestly, I have no idea how big a badminton court is up until this point, because I don't think I've ever seen any Americans play badminton, like, ever. Well, that's probably a different story. Anyway, so a cross between tennis, table tennis, on a medium-sized court. Okay, you use a solid paddle, but the ball is a wiffle ball with lots of holes in it. I have an example right here, hoping to interest Mr. Fluffy with it, but he doesn't seem to be very interested. So I'd say generally power isn't that much of a big deal, and to me it feels like tennis remade for people who don't want to run around that much, and also you don't need to hit nearly as hard. So kind of like tennis on easy mode, and yet will let me still use some of my existing ping pong skills, like for instance trying to slice and spin the ball sideways, right? I heard that this is actually a game made for like older people. I mean, I hope that doesn't sound rude, because I love this game, and there's definitely still a good deal of aerobic exercise involved, right? But that just may be because I'm a beginner, and at this point, half the game is just running around chasing loose balls like a fiend. Okay, point number two. I do want to talk about the name of the sport, okay? Pickleball. So apparently, it might have been named after the founder of the sport's pet or something really peripheral. I actually found the name to be really off base, because most racket sports that I can think of don't actually have the word ball in the name, unless you count racquetball itself, right? Which, as a side note, is also a terrible name, because there are way too many racket sports that actually uses something that could be called a racket, so calling something racquetball is also not specific enough. Anyway, tangent up, but pickleball makes me think of something like kind of mixer that somebody would want to ruin their gin with, or something that's served next to a hamburger and chips combo. Besides its proximity away from racket sports and closer to team sports such as basketball, football, right? But anyway, maybe that's why it isn't that popular, because the name is not very intuitive, right? And I think it's mostly recreational rather than super duper competitive, right? How do I judge that? Because I don't think you can make a living playing pickleball, even in the USA, right? Which is pickleball's country of origin. Now, if I were to rename it, I'd lean closer to the sound that it makes, such as, you know, how we call table tennis ping pong mostly, right? So for this game, with this kind of ball, maybe I'd call it like whiff waff? Or does that sound mildly dirty? I don't know. I mean, I think if one thinks too hard on any sound combination, everything starts to sound a little dirty. Okay, so number three, why do I love it so? Honestly, I think partly it's just because I'm old and out of shape, okay? Feels kind of good to admit that. I mean, I don't really want to chase around a tennis court as a beginner at this stage of my life, right? And while I still love ping pong, there's just hardly enough spaces where people play that casually that I am able to find. I mean, like, I think with ping pong, either you're like super hardcore, or people were squatting on ping pong tables to use for like beer pong / Beirut at some kid's house party, right? There's hardly any of that in-between stage, right? That's what's the difference is with pickleball, and because it has relatively lighter minimal fitness requirements that even I can get into. Because in the single months that I've been playing this game, I've already played against players of all age groups, right? I would say from like mid-20s and up, right? The barrier to entry is just very, very low. I think that's really, really awesome, right? I mean, I think I'm really starting to obsess and imagining things like whether I could fit an entire pickleball court in my own yard. And I've been daydreaming now that I'm retired, maybe I should, you know, aim for professional status. Wouldn't that be something? But, you know, I'm pretty sure my wifey might veto that whole notion, but you never know, maybe she'll join me, right? So finally, number 4, are there any downsides to this fun little game? Well, actually, there is a little bit of a downside, I can say that for sure, but that's really mostly due to how out of shape I am, okay? So imagine this. After the first group session of playing pickleball for 2 hours, my hamstrings on both legs felt like they were on fire for like more than 2 days. Oh my god, that is so sad, okay? And right now, I think I might have like some lightly sprained my wrist a bit, trying to chase down too many shots that were clearly more difficult than my own current level of competency would indicate, okay? But is that going to stop me from playing this game? Oh, heck nah, okay? In fact, today, I've had the pleasure and the luck of playing a session in the morning already for like 2 hours, and I still plan on going to play later in the evening as well. Anyway, in a lot of ways, I'm kind of super happy that this thing I just discovered isn't super duper popular, right? But just popular enough to have local government maintained courts literally minutes of walking distance away from my house. I mean, my real dream right now is to suck my wifey into loving this as much as I do, and then we can play doubles and we would each have to run only half as much. Okay, I've been ignoring Mr. Fluffy, haven't I? Thank you for being so patient. He's just been sitting here like a good boy. Isn't he such a good boy? I mean, would he like it? Actually, I bet he would adore chasing around a pastel-colored wiffle ball. Okay. No. Am I overestimating your abilities? Though I do question whether we can bring him to the local court where I like to play to have him spectate, right? Well, now that I think about it, we do have a cat backpack where he could sit inside a backpack and look outside through like the little bubble, right? Oh boy, I bet I could probably use him to help me exercise if I brought him along in the cat backpack, just walking around. That would totally help my fitness goals. Oh man, do you want to explore the outside world, Mr. Fluffy? Do you? Well, maybe if my wifey was with me, right? So one of us can always be watching over you. Anyway, have you ever heard of pickleball or played it? Or rather, would you play it now that you've heard my very, very quick description? Let me know in the comments below. Like and sub and all that jazz as well. If you want, whatever. Doesn't hurt me. Cheers.